Let's talk about how to run Visual Studio on Mac. You basically have three solutions for running Visual Studio on Mac. Solution number one is using a software called Parallels. Parallels is basically a software that allows you to create a virtual machine on your Mac operating system, and then that virtual machine will run a Windows 10 operating system that you can use to do your test automation using Visual Studio. This is actually my favorite option, and this is the one that I use. There are some advantages to utilizing Parallels. The first advantage is that you can install Parallels on your native Mac operating system. What that means is that you can easily switch between Mac and Windows. So if you enjoy all of the features of Mac, but you want to run Visual Studio, then you can simply switch between the two applications. It's basically like another native application on your Mac operating system. So you can be coding, and then if you want to use Safari, you just switch back to the Mac operating system really quickly and then start using that and any other Mac software that you want to use. It's easily and readily available for you because it lives on the native Mac operating system. It's also easy to share resources because the Parallels is a very nice software. They've created a really good system that works really well with Mac. And so you can easily copy and paste files between the two systems, images, whatever you want to do, and they even have shared folders. The third advantage of using Parallels is that the setup is really easy. Definitely the easiest setup out of all the options because you simply download it, and then when you go through the installation process is made super simple for you, as you will see when we actually go to install the software. There are some disadvantages of using Parallel. Probably the main disadvantage is that it costs money. Usually, all very good software or things in general cost money, right? As we know as Mac users, good stuff costs money. So in this case, you have to dish out some cash if you want to play with Parallels. It's not too bad, but if you're concerned about money, then you're going to have to pay $80 for the home edition of Parallels with support for 1 year, which means you'll get free upgrades. However, after that 1 year, you'll need to pay $50 for upgrades if you want them. You don't have to upgrade, but you will have to pay for that. And you'll also need to pay $39 for the Windows 10 Professional Edition so that you can run Visual Studio. Also, the disadvantage of any virtual software is that they take up local hardware resources, which means you'll have less hard drive space, you'll have less RAM to do the things that you want to do. Now, if you're running something like a MacBook Pro, you're probably not so worried about it. In fact, that's what I run, and the software runs flawlessly. I can easily switch between Parallels and Mac without any lag, without any problems, neither one of them slowing anything down. It's fantastic, and I'm totally happy. But maybe if you're running a lower version of a Mac, this may be a problem. Although I've never heard anyone complaining about using Parallels on a Mac operating system. The second option that you have is using a software called Boot Camp. Boot Camp is pretty awesome because it actually comes native with the with the Mac operating system. And so what that means is you don't have to pay any money. It's cheaper than using Parallels because since it comes with the Mac operating system, you just simply have to use it to create a Windows operating system. There are some disadvantages to this though. The problem is that you can't run two operating systems at once. As you did with Parallels, when Parallels is just a virtual machine that's running on your Mac operating system and you can switch between the two. You can't do that with Boot Camp. With Boot Camp, you can either run Mac OS or Windows 10. You can't do both because it starts at boot time. So the boot time, you choose Windows or Mac, and then you run one or the other. Obviously, this has disadvantages because if you enjoy the native Mac experience, and you want to be able to easily switch between the two, you won't be able to. You'll have to get into Visual Studio in Windows 10. You'll need to code your stuff, and then you'll need to log off, restart your computer, and then open up the Mac operating system to do the stuff that you enjoy in Mac. The other disadvantage is that I can't help you with Bootcamp. I don't have this solution. I use Parallels, and so I don't know enough about it. I know this option exists, and so I can't answer any questions if you have them. However, I do know that on Google, there is a good community and a good amount of resources that can help you answer all your questions regarding Bootcamp. I did a little bit of reading about it to teach you and give you the options. But again, I personally don't have enough knowledge to give you good answers. The final option is to just run Visual Studio on a Mac operating system. This is a pretty new option because recently Microsoft has released what they're calling .NET Core, and .NET Core allows us to integrate with multiple different platforms. The advantages of running on the Mac Visual Studio on the Mac operating system is that it's definitely the cheapest solution, because what it means is you don't need to pay for the parallel software and you don't need to pay for the Windows 10 license. All you have to do is get Visual Studio, and there's a free edition. There's Visual Studio Community for Mac that you can use on your Mac operating system. It's also the easiest solution in regards to downloads, because you really only need to download one thing and then just install Visual Studio Community Edition for Mac on your Mac, as opposed to downloading something like Parallels and a Windows 10 operating system. You just have to download one thing. It may not be the fastest installation, but it's probably the easiest because you only have one thing to download. I've provided some relevant links for your information. There's a link for Visual Studio for Mac Community Edition that you can download, and there's also a link for how to install Visual Studio for Mac. There are some disadvantages with this option. The first disadvantage is it's still kind of experimental. Even though Windows has created .NET Core 2.0, what that means is it's still kind of new. Selenium is actually not ready for .NET Core features. They're updating Selenium WebDriver to deal with .NET Core, but there are a lot of features that still don't work, simply because all APIs from .NET Framework are not yet available in .NET Core. They're trying to catch up, but it takes time. It's about a year cycle to release the next .NET Core version. So what that means is, if you're going to be doing Selenium stuff, you're going to have problems that nobody else has using .NET Framework. The other problem is that, again, I can't help here. I've actually tried installing Visual Studio for Mac, and it didn't work for me. And I'm guessing it was because it was too early. But even if it does work for you now, I know I'm 100% sure that there are issues with .NET Core 2.0 and Selenium WebDriver. You're going to have problems that no one else encounters. So I can't help you because I don't have the solutions to those problems. I've never encountered them. Therefore, I can't help. And then that leads to the third disadvantage, is that there's still very little online support whenever you Google around for a problem, because .NET Core is still being adapted by so many technologies. There's not a lot of online support to help you. So you're either stuck dealing with a problem that you can't resolve, or you probably have to spend hours trying to figure out a solution to a problem that no one else has yet encountered. So again, although this is a fantastic solution, I probably don't recommend it for you yet, because you won't be able to follow the course right now. Maybe with a future version of .NET Core and Selenium WebDriver bindings being updated, you might be able to migrate to this solution. But right now, if you migrate to this solution as of December 2017, you're going to be in trouble because you won't be able to follow the courses. So I'm giving you this option, letting you know that it's available, but I would recommend that you don't use this option.